Have you ever noticed that our favorite movies and TV shows would be far less enjoyable if our beloved characters actually behaved like people we'd let into our houses instead of the scheming, drama courting, secret keeping gossips they really are? Or that we tend to root for the main character despite obvious dysfunctions simply because we see it from their perspective? Why are we rooting for Dexter or Walter White when their mountains of collateral damage would be considered toxic beyond measure in our regular lives? The answer might surprise you, but what will surprise you more is what it reveals about the human soul that can liberate us and cure mental suffering. Hi, Wounded Healers. I'm Brian Hogan, life coach, filmmaker, and clinical therapist. Welcome to another Wellness Wednesday, your weekly oasis at the intersection of creativity and well being. Today, we're going to talk about why conflict is so exciting in storytelling and our lives, and how to feed the soul a steady diet of the nourishment that it actually craves. I am a life coach, therapist, filmmaker, and professor, and while those things may seem to be all over the map, they are actually very much interrelated for me. Filmmaking and acting are my original first loves from childhood. And I realized that what fascinated me and drew me to storytelling in the first place was this fascination with human behavior and sort of seeing what makes people act the way that they do. And aside from our lives, which are complicated and totally fast paced as kids, the stories of books, movies, and TV shows seemed like a great place to learn what kinds of decisions humans make and how we're supposed to act in the world. For better or worse, stories are our teachers, way more effectively than textbooks, instructors, or facts ever could be. And that's because stories make sense of things for us, help us understand what things mean. And most importantly, stories are crafted specifically to hold our attention in a way a teacher, a textbook, and a fact never could, by wrapping up our curiosity in the outcome. And when I was a kid, I was endlessly curious about all the characters on all the shows I would watch. I was one of those latchkey kids that had free reign over the TV set. So I was watching Hunter, Knight Rider, Moonlighting way before I was ready to make sense of or integrate any of that betrayal, murder, sex, and conflict in any kind of coherent way. And I remember actually thinking often when I'm watching those characters, like, why would they do that? That is not in their best interest at all. Like, I couldn't quite understand as a kid. And I was like, that's just going to cause more conflict. That's so obviously going to cause drama. Why would they do something like that? These things are wholly illogical. And then as I got older, I started to learn more about story structure. And I was like, oh, wow. So what makes a story interesting it is actually how much conflict there is. That's what makes it interesting to watch, how much potential for miscommunication and misunderstanding there really is. That's actually one of the fundamental rules of storytelling. And I was like, I wonder why that is. Because even as a kid, I remember feeling inside, like watching TV shows, and when they would get to the end and I would be like there was a cliffhanger or a tragedy and something was unresolved, I was always like, damn, like I really just want them to have their happy ending. Can it just have a hunky dory ending? This is like 8-year-old me, you know what I mean? And like I didn't understand why there always had to be so much conflict. I think I was watching to escape the feelings of conflict in my own childhood, but I didn't know that then. I just felt dissatisfied, even while I was like unable to look away from it all. As I got older, I realized that people don't want to watch hunky dory because it's not relatable to the human experience, which is where there's so much common ground between filmmaking and the field of psychology, like the field of life coaching and mental health, because it's about really tuning into the fact that we are, as a species, as individuals, tuned in to drama and conflict. We're tuned into it. And we've got to make a deliberate choice to tune out of that as the way that we get our purpose and meaning and fulfillment. Like, it doesn't have to be through the enjoyment of conflict, actually. Eckhart Tolle describes a similar concept in his book, and he calls it the pain body. The pain body lies dormant for a certain amount of time, but when it wants to come up and feed, it feeds off pain. No matter whether it's your pain, other people's pain, something you're watching on TV, it just wants pain, 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 and conflict, and it will evoke other people's pain bodies to come out just so it can feed. And the pain body can feel like an emotional leech to us, like an emotional vampire that comes up, but it's a part of you that has been heroically holding your pain. And there's not judgment in this because everyone's got a pain body that holds all of our pain. but those emotional suppressions need to come out in some way. And it often feels like a subtle, almost imperceptible craving for conflict. Our painful emotions don't just disappear, and if we don't process them, they come up as a pain body. This proclivity to not deal with emotions is reinforced by our culture at every turn that tells us to bite our lip, pick up our chin, and just get on with it. This culture that we live in, that we swim in, like it's our water if we were fish, so we don't even recognize it. It's like a culture of repression. Our culture values repression, suppression, and looking good over feeling good. Our culture values etiquette above authenticity. It values ideas like say you're fine rather than bring me into your suffering with you. It values all of that. And so the pain body then, because culture values that in the arenas of social interaction and work and professionalism, then there's these other arenas of entertainment and play. And all of those arenas now are vastly catered to the pain body too, because the pain body needs some kind of outlet. And so the pain body gets this outlet through watching and consuming conflict, because there's resonance there with this part of us that holds the pain, that is in so much pain. And when we feed the pain body with this sort of like diet of conflict, we're allowing the pain body to sort of grow stronger, as if the pain body is going to the gym and doing its reps, like not to get better, to get stronger, as in more painful, right? So here's the wild part. Conflict cravings aren't the deepest reason that we suffer as humans. They're more like a symptom. The root cause is something far stranger and far more powerful, hidden right in plain sight. It's our own language, our use of language. And if you want to see how words themselves trick us into pain, then you'll love next week's episode, so tune in for that one. But what I really want to do here is like talk about how to feed the pain body a diet of compassion and gentleness and grace and truth. And that's the diet that allows the pain body to actually get its needs met. And when the pain body starts to get its needs met, its appetites change. And so what happens in our culture, I think, is we all have this pain. We all hold the pain body. And because of the values in our culture, people tend to think, oh, my pain body is my actual personality. But that's not the truth. It's just that our culture prizes so much all the things that the pain body needs that we think of ourselves as like, oh yeah, I just love to watch serial killer movies, or, I love scary movies. Some of that is personal preference. Like there's no wrong. There's no moral thing here about any of this. Like you can absolutely like whatever you like. Absolutely. However, the idea that 90% of the population all happens to just love serial killer movies, give me a break. Like that's not all personal preference. You know what I mean? There's some other stuff happening, some cultural conditioning and evolutionary imperatives being triggered there. And so here are my favorite ways to nourish my soul. But actually first, let me just say, I absolutely love Dexter. So I've seen every single episode of every spinoff and the original, and I just saw the final episode of the new season of the newest spinoff, and I felt indicted by him. He even dares me to question why I root for him. And I don't know, but I do. It's a conflict craving. We all have them. They don't make us bad. They are normal. I will never stop watching Dexter, but I can also nourish my soul. You don't feed your pain. You don't feed your body only junk food, hopefully, right? So why would you feed only junk food to your mind? I'm talking about balance and counterbalance, not some moral right, wrong, virtue signaling crap. Okay. So here's my favorite ways to nourish my soul. They include reading books, both fiction and nonfiction. Martha Beck and Toltec wisdom are some of my favorites. And getting morning sunlight has been a game changer for me. Like there's some scientific evidence to suggest that when you go out in the morning and you just let morning sunlight hit your eyes, it actually like helps your whole nervous system relax. The cortisol levels normalize. And that all happens just from a little bit of exposure to morning sunlight. So morning sunlight. But the most powerful form of soul nourishment I know is self-kindness and self-acceptance. So even the part that watches serial killers on a loop to, quote, cope with anxiety gets kindness and love. You can nourish your soul while indulging in a guilty pleasure. Self-kindness is the key. Allow yourself to be. And in the space of acceptance and safety, transformation is bound to happen. Carl Rogers, actually the founder of person-centered psychotherapy, once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." So practice self-kindness and turn your guilty pleasures into guiltless delights, even as you add some conflict-free soul nourishment to your psychological and spiritual diet as well. So if this resonates, please share it with a friend who might be sick of their conflict cravings and be ready for soul nourishment instead. And share your own ways of nourishing your soul in the comments below. See you next week for another Wellness Wednesday. Until then, much love. I trust you, humanity. See you in the next video. Bye.